Thank you for tuning in to the Happy Hearts podcast with your host, Becca. Rate and subscribe as we power you to live with love. Welcome everyone to Happy Hearts podcast. If you've not been here before, my name's Becca. I'm the host, and this is in collaboration with Happy Hearts House, the emotional health and wellness, education and support. Well, it's a project at the moment, but hoping to be a charity someday soon. And yeah, I'm glad to have you back. If you are avid listeners, I just want to show my gratitude, and for anybody new, welcome and hope you enjoy. Today we're going to be talking about relationships and intimacy, and I'm joined by Jessica Flash. She's one of the mums in Happy Hearts House community, and she's amazing. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Wave at the camera, even though nobody can. You can.
I know.
Thank you for having me, Becca.
Oh, always. I know it can be quite awkward because they're like, hi. Even I do it. I'm like, hi everyone, and I'm waving.
They don't feel it. Everyone feels it.
I hope so. So yeah, when I was thinking about like this subject, and like Jess, I've been doing a lot of research into intimacy and different levels of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
When I was thinking about this subject, I wasn't just focusing on like romantic relationships. I was talking about like friendships and relationships between parents and children, parents, siblings, So I thought that we could, come together, have a little conversation about our experiences with intimacy, our understanding of how we experience intimacy with other people, and where that's led us to today, whether we can expand on that and what that might look like, and yeah, just have a general chit chat really.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'm so ready. Lead the way, Becca. I'm so ready for it.
Yeah, so like in my experience of intimacy, that I don't think that I grew up with a great understanding of how important intimacy was in relationships. I don't think it was modeled to me, and I don't think I ever heard anybody speak about it, if I'm quite honest. Like, we grow up, we watch Disney movies. A lot of us, especially 90s kids, are Disney kids. We grow up knowing about Prince Charming and Cinderella, and she just dotes on him for no apparent reason. And
Little Mermaid was definitely
yeah.
Oh yeah.
There isn't anything apart from, oh, this person is attractive, and I like that they're attractive. No, like what kind of influence is that really?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. You talk about the importance of intimacy, and I realized like I didn't even understand the concept of it, never mind the importance. Like, what is intimacy? Probably up until like, I mean, if I say 5 years, that might even be longer, like really 3 years, and even just in the last 6 months, understanding what is intimacy is kind of a big thing.
I think energetically we know, like innately, how to be intimate with people. Like, some people have a greater connection with their empathetic skills, so they're able to put themselves into other people's shoes effectively. Um, they're able to create a level of understanding for people, and people's and the situations that they might find themselves in. But like when we talk about intimacy, and I did mention it a little bit on one of the survival guide episodes that I did with Joshua Wright, Nature Boy. That is available on our YouTube channel. If you want to watch that and check that out, you can just search Happy Hearts House. Yeah, I mentioned it on there that intimacy, when people think of the word intimacy, and I don't even think it was in my vocabulary for a lot of years, they think more physical than anything else. Like it's related to more of a physical side of a connection rather than what other areas it could cover. And I thought that's why it might be something interesting to explore. And as I've done my own research, and it was like I was called to find out. I wanted to know more.
Mhm.
And then I came across, like, well, in fact, I started to understand, how I viewed intimacy, and that I was able to connect with people on an emotional level,
Mhm.
and that was quite important to me to be able to do that. Um, that it comes across in quite a lot of my relationships, like it comes across in the relationships with my children. I want to know them and on an emotional level, but I had no awareness that you could go even deeper than that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. In reading that book that you kind of suggested, which I feel like was very synchronistic with what I'm going through just in my life and the exploration of myself. What is that book called again? The Seven Levels of Intimacy.
Yes, the seven levels of
Um,
intimacy.
and
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
by
in the
Matthew
first chapter.
Kelly.
Yes, I'm just in the first chapter, and I like that concept too. I really agree with the idea that I think we're almost born innately at an energetic level to be intimate, and
Mm,
seeing that as a mother, kids do want to connect. There's touch, there's the physical touch of it, or there's just the emotional need. Um, but it's that process of self-revelation. I think that he talks about what is it? It inspires us to give ourselves completely to another person. And so
yes.
it's that walking in our authentic self that I'm really learning is the level of intimacy I'm trying to attain, because I also can relate to the energetic feeling of other people and being empathetic. And yet I have a hard time letting myself, and that's the intimacy aspect, right? It's like I have to give
Yes.
myself and put myself out there too. And that,
I think that's another thing as well, that that people don't realize that they can reach an intimate connection with themselves,
yes.
and that's where the interest sparked for me, at first, with learning more about what intimacy was because I identified it a lot with self-love. And anybody that has listened to this podcast, has listened to Survival Guides, who knows us from the community, is in Happy Hearts House community, they all know that that's where I started my journey, was building my own self-love.
Mhm.
Um, so learning that I could give to myself what I gave out to others, it was a big deal for me. It opened so many doors. Um, and yeah, I think, self love on its own is a level of intimacy that um, I think more people should be exploring.
I think you're so right about, I feel like that is almost at least for me too, like the first step. I mean, how can we expect to be truly intimate with others if we don't have that intimacy and understanding with ourselves? And not to reference this book too much, but I really resonate with so much of it. And the idea that, like, when we don't get in touch with our story, there's the aspect of sharing our story with others, but in doing that, it's really sharing the story with ourselves. And if we forget to relate and share our own story with ourselves, we basically can go mad with that, and
Mm.
I have seen that in people so I think you're right. And I love the self-love. I'm still learning the difference between self-care, self-love, and now yeah, self-intimacy. So
Mm.
that's so
I don't
powerful.
think that's what I mean. Like, I don't think there is much difference between self-intimacy and self-love. I think it literally is the same thing. By giving yourself love, by showing yourself the time and attention that you seek without in others, um, you are creating an intimacy with yourself. And yes, it does identify to your story, because how much of your story can you identify as being true to yourself?
That's true.
And
That's
that in itself is, a discovery.
yeah.
Um, and accepting whatever, happened, and, whatever made you and got you to where you are today. Um, giving forgiveness to yourself, telling yourself that you're enough and you matter, um, and that you're deserving, you
Mhm.
know, um, I think helps you identify with your story and not identify as a victim, but as a thriver from it.
I like that too. And I know you've talked about in your survival guides, like victim mentality, and it feels like such a fine line when we're not given the tools early on to understand what intimacy is and how we can have that with other people. I feel like I've constantly been riding that line of, like, am I the victim here? Is this sharing my story in a helpful way that's self-empowering? Um, so yeah, I feel like understanding intimacy from a younger age, or just even now at a deeper level, is going to be so powerful in sharing my story and overcoming that victim mentality.
Yeah, definitely. I think moving out of that. I mean, because like even understanding love itself, because I didn't understand, the saying of you've got to love yourself first before you can love anybody else. I
Mhm.
didn't understand that. That wasn't enough of an explanation for me. It wasn't enough of a reason to give that love to myself. It didn't make sense. Like, why would I need to love myself? I didn't get it. You
I didn't,
know?
I get that. I didn't get it. And I didn't understand how. I thought loving myself is
Yeah,
all by myself, the nice, shiny things. And yet I still
yes.
felt empty inside. I didn't know what I needed was, yeah, to connect with other like-minded people, to talk about these sorts of things. Um, Also to really understand, like, my relationships with people at a deeper level. I've dealt with a lot of parental stuff. Like, there's a lot of history with my mother and I, and that's something I'm trying to learn, which is why this is really helpful with passing down to my kids, and
Yeah,
seeing the process you've gone through, Becca, in exploring these topics. And every day, you learn about this stuff and you show it to others, but you're also stepping into that, and you know understanding what it is you need that is self-empowering. And the more you're your authentic self, I just see the more everything is lining up for you too, which is really inspiring. So
yeah.
without getting
It's overwhelming as well, because like, I never considered myself like a lucky person, but then that's victim mentality in itself. Like I'd never connected with myself enough um to know that I was capable of standing in my own power. And I'm grateful that you can see that in within me. Like that's so many kind words. And I'm like, I appreciate you so much, Jess. You know that you have done a lot for me on my journey, and that I look up to you a lot, and the things that you have done for yourself, like public speaking, like one of the most things that people struggle with. You've done that, and by doing that and modeling that, you've shown to other people they can do it too, and I was one of them, so I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you.
But yeah, one of the things about intimacy that I learned, that somebody else's truth doesn't have to be mine.
Mm,
And I think that's the first thing into self-love as well that I learned, was that um same thing, was that what somebody else showed me didn't mean that that was the love that I deserved. So the person that needed to show me the love that I deserved was me. Now, how do I identify that? How do I know what love I deserve? Well, what love have I been giving all along
mhm,
to other people? My
yeah,
time, my attention, my efforts, my words of admiration, my support, my generosity, my honesty, my all,
yeah.
basically, you
Oh,
know.
yeah. That's so
And it took a long time to identify, these are the things that I give to other people. I can give them to myself. And, the day that I figured that out, like my whole world just, opened up, and it was madness. But nobody had told me before that that was the key.
I've gotten
I,
hits about it. I always remember one quote I heard somewhere was like, it's like you wouldn't talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself. Like, don't talk to yourself the way you, I forget how, but like, the things you say to yourself inside your head, you generally would not say to your closest friend. And I was like, oh
mm,
yeah, why do I talk to myself like that? Um, so
self-sabotage,
it is.
self-deprecation. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I really, the statement you just made about, someone else's truth is does not have to be mine. Like that right there is so powerful. It's a constant reminder I need to come back to, is that I don't, if something that they're doing, someone else is doing it, it has an effect on me. Like that's not really, I need to sit back and think about like where is that coming from, and how can I adjust myself to really get deeper at that and have a better intimate relationship with that emotion and with
Hmm.
myself.
And you do that by giving yourself patience and being gentle and giving yourself the love, like the way you would comfort somebody else. You can do that for yourself.
Mhm.
And I think when it comes to being that intimate with yourself, you've got to push past all that you think is normal, all that you think that society has shown you, all that you have been modeled by adults before you.
Mhm.
um you've got to be able to break past all of that, and it's not an easy road, you know
No.
um it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time and a lot of effort. And it might come across, you're going to get challenged as
Sometimes it
well.
feels like two steps forward, one step back.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it brings up that thought of you're right. Like that's the crux of it, is this fear of rejection,
Mm-hmm.
um, for being yourself. And it's absolutely what we need to break through to have true intimacy, especially at a collective level. And it is, at a societal level too, it is just something that we're constantly conditioned against. So you're right, it is the hardest thing.
It takes a lot of time, and recently, I had a separation of a relationship, and um, you know, it's been over a long time, but it the reason why it wasn't, transpiring was because I was living in fear. I was living in fear of rejection, and I was living in fear of not being accepted for being truly who I am.
Mm,
And it took a long time for me to get to that point. And how I got to that point was from digging deep within myself and seeing, right, okay, I've identified that I have fear. But where does that fear transpire from? Oh, I fear being rejected by people. And the only reason I was able to make that connection was because I was able to look back at all the instances, all my relationships that I've ever built within my life, and see what was the factor that joined them all together. Um, and then from that point, um, I was able to identify where it began.
yeah. Hmm.
But it's a whole process, and it took so long. Like, it wasn't something that I worked on every day, because I would have ended up in a hole.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would give myself rest. I would drink more water. I would do self-care.
Yeah.
For me, self-care is like reading, listening to music, dancing, getting out in nature and walking. Um, you
That's
know,
my type of self-care too. Love all that.
spending time with the kids, movie nights, munchy days.
Love it.
Yeah.
I can relate to that too.
Yeah. It'll
Um,
all look different to everyone, won't it? But um, what I'm trying to say, I think, is that it's not something that you need to be doing actively every day. And when you're not doing anything, you're still doing something, because your body is telling you that you don't have the energy for it today,
mm,
and that's okay.
mhm,
you know um you're listening to yourself, you're giving yourself what you need at that moment, and it's
mhm.
fine. Then the next day you can get back to doing the work and doing what you need to do to create that intimacy and that love within yourself.
Yeah. I think it's a
And
powerful
yeah.
reminder that we can always put the work down for a bit. That's a new concept too. And I can relate to, my process. I had a very unhealthy codependent relationship with my mother, who suffered from various addictions and, mental health disorders and stuff. And I was the oldest. I am the oldest of four kids, and so at a very young age, about like 11 or 12, I kind of became her personal therapist, where she would just tell me things that were not inappropriate for a 12-year-old to be managing.
Mhm.
And so it took me a long time and some like non-traditional therapy to really break through and recognize, I wasn't responsible for all that, and kind of come away with a level of intimacy of self with that. And then I carried that over into my marriage, and did the same things where I wasn't being my authentic self. And the more I pretended and got into, you know certain like addictions with maybe food or shopping and stuff like that, it got away from me, and I really thought I was this person that I was just so unhappy with. And
Mhm.
then that led to issues within my marriage. So I can relate to like going back and finding this point. It was like, went through my mother, went into my marriage, and then becoming a mother too is kind of where it really cracked open, and I was forced to look at everything. And I'm still on this journey. I still, meeting up with the community here has then brought me to a deeper level. And I think that's where I'm really understanding that there's this line of the importance of intimacy with self is profound, but we can't do it without the interdependence of others. And
Yeah.
it's such an interesting paradox. That's why I'm
And
so
that,
grateful for
yeah.
you. Yeah.
It is because I mean I think so we have the interactions that we have as children, um and yeah, not necessarily is it going to affect everybody. Like, I mean, to say it doesn't affect you at all is, you know, that it's going to affect you somewhere down the line. But some people will manage it better than others,
Mhm.
and that's okay. Everybody's different. I think that being able to like identify that and then create connections and different intimacy levels and experience intimacy in different ways along your life period. These are the things that these connections are what show you um things within yourself that you could work with to find that deeper intimacy with self. And then as you find deep deeper intimacy with self, you'll then find it with other people as well.
Yeah.
um like for instance, like the discovery that I've been on, being able to identify where the rejection and the fear of not being accepted came from, helped me to come away from a codependent relationship. But it helps me to discuss to break free of that fear,
Mhm.
because I was able to say, okay, now I understand it. I can do something about it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, all these years I've suffered with depression and anxiety, and and sometimes during the past I've had self-injurious behavior, and you know and I've been very, very ill, and all because I was empty. I was completely empty, and I didn't understand why, because I was giving and giving and giving, because I was feared that if I didn't give enough, I'd be rejected, I'd be abandoned, and nobody wanted to know the real me. And then um I started doing the work. I started realizing how much I could give to myself. I formed relationships within um paradigm shift community, and it blew my world open. And then I was able to find not just me, but my whole purpose with Happy Hearts House. So, it seems like a fairy tale, but it's not a fairy tale. It was because I was willing to do what I needed to do to to give to myself.
Yeah.
And I knew that giving to myself would enable me to give to others. Um, and so when it came to the relationship that um, you know, I've just come away from, I was able to go into that conversation with love and compassion, and understanding that my ideas didn't have to be the other person's ideas, and my wishes and feelings didn't have to be the other person's wishes and feelings. And I made that very clear, that I'm going to speak now about my experiences, what my experiences are and how I felt and how I feel has no reflection on you. They're exactly a part of who I have been and and effectively who I am.
Mhm.
And I expected a breakdown in a breakdown in communication, and that is like, it's not what I got,
Yeah,
and
that's empowering.
yeah, we broke through into a deeper level of intimacy than we've ever had before in 7 years, because we were able to understand that we both had different views of life, and we both had wanted different things, and we loved each other enough to come away to recognize that what we had wasn't healthy for either of us.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, it was a big deal. It's been a big deal. I mean, we're still working through stuff, and uh trying to make it where everybody we speak on a daily basis now, and we wasn't at that level before.
Mhm.
um and that's just because we're able to be at we've met each other, not just at a physical and emotional level, but at kind of at a spiritual level, even though that person isn't particularly spiritual. you know we've reached a different level of intimacy, and that's because I went to find how I could learn intimacy deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I that it just makes me think of that book again, and
Mm,
that this idea that intimacy is so multidimensional, and um yeah, intellectual, spiritual, physical, emotional. And one other thing you were talking about, I forget exactly what it was you said, but it just kind of sparked this thought in me, and that in developing our intimacy with ourself, then that allows us to give it out to others, which is not worrying so much about the self-rejection, and then receive, which is it's just kind of where I'm still at too, is like receiving that love and that intimacy from others. um, that, yeah, I mean, I'm getting a little choked up even talking about it, because that touches the fear of rejection for me too. It's like, oh, if I start receiving that, is it going to stop? Is it going to be taken away? Is it conditional? That was
mhm,
very much, I think, still part of the trauma that I'm working through, is that the love that I often did receive was very conditional and would be manipulated and taken away. So I think that is so inspiring and profound. And um, thank you for sharing that. Like, that is so cool. And I'm excited to see and discuss more as you keep going on this journey, because obviously it never stops really, which is a
it
hard.
doesn't. It doesn't, but we should get excited about that. We can
Yes.
continuously learn about ourselves, other people that we care about, people that we're likely to meet in the future, and our worlds. We can continuously
You're
learn and grow
so
together,
you're
and
so
it's so
right.
exciting.
It's
Um,
exciting. How
yeah.
boring would it be if we were all just healed and everything was just dandy all the time?
Handy dandy,
It
yeah.
would be the fairy tales, and then that would be not as interesting.
Imagine, yeah, just like Prince Charming, and then what? You
And
know,
then what, right?
and
The
then
story
what?
always ends. I mean, it is usually like it's this adventure and it's an arc. And the old original fairy tales were not, they were very interesting.
Mm,
They were moral stories. And so they had a lot of darkness to them, and they serve a purpose in understanding yourself too. Um, and I still explore some of those with my kids. So
yeah,
yeah, no, but it's funny how the fairy tales always kind of end right when things line up, and you're like, well, what happens? Does nothing happen
yeah.
after that point?
Yes. What happens then? Okay, they get married, they live happily ever after. What does that look like?
What does that look like? That's true, right?
But the thing is, that's the good thing, is that we're the authors of our own story. We can write our own happily ever after, and that happily ever after might change. You
Yes,
know, the person that we are today, sat here between me and you, we're not going to be the same in 6 months' time. And then in a year's month's time, we're not going to be the same again, you know? And just seeing that growth, like envisioning that growth is exhilarating.
you're right. I feel it right in my heart. As you're saying that, I feel it. I'm not going to be the same after this conversation, Becca.
Well, we always have the best conversations, Jeff. You
I
know,
love I agree.
even outside of recordings. But yeah, like what you said earlier about you know, we develop within ourselves, and then we'd be able to, show that to other people, and then they might even take that time to learn within themselves, and then it creates the ripple effect. I know you said it in different words, but
No, it's
yes.
exactly. I got goose chills from just hearing that. It is something that provokes fear in me. As I hear you say that again, it is absolutely what I seek and want at a deep soul level, and something that I've been conditioned so hard that I still fear. And that's why your spaces, paradigm shift, are so important. For me,
Mm.
this it's still an incremental step-by-step process for me. I make little bursts here and there, but the spaces are
And
important.
yeah, but it's all good, because Happy Hearts House is literally a space that is built to grow with the people that access it. So um yeah, that was the point that I was gonna be making, is everything that I bring to people, to other people, to our young people, I want to know it on a deep level and live it and experience it, so that I can come from a point of, with kind of wisdom, um but not only that, it creates a connection. If you feel, you have some understanding, or you can see something in me that either you aspire to or that you can relate with, that's going to create a better connection. Therefore, it's going to make it an ability for you to be able to access the support and the care that you need to further to further become independent in your own growth. And
Mhm.
that's what Happy Hearts House is about. It's not about um, receiving counseling, talk therapy, and all these different therapies, and always constantly having to have therapies, you know, through periods of your life. It's about gaining skills and experience, and support that is long lasting, that's going to give you skills to be independent in your own growth without having to um, constantly rely on to have an unhealthy relying on medical services,
Mhm.
because not everybody can access medical services,
Yeah.
and it's important that everybody receives the support, and a support network that can help them to become the best versions of themselves, to reach their full potential,
I,
whatever that might look like. And we might never even reach that, but at least we're working towards it, you know
yeah.
and we're in a positive mindset. And I think that it all starts with being able to reach the different levels of intimacy. And as you said about the seven levels in intimacy book, that has been one thing that's helped me to look at things differently and to explore myself further as I've been reading it. you know it gave me a lot of confidence in doing and making certain decisions that I've had to, these past few weeks. And I think, yeah, it's been a journey and it's been tough. It's been hard, it's been heavy. I've cried, I've had anger, I've felt moments of joy. But overall, I just feel immensely blessed and immensely grateful that, you know, all of it is leading to me being able to help other people, even if it doesn't look like help in the conventional sense.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you've been human and you've allowed yourself to be human in front of others for the benefit of others to also approach that too.
You do that too.
I do. I'm
You do.
recognizing that within myself too. I do.
I
And
mean,
I've just started this book, but I can feel that it's also going to be beneficial for that process within myself.
yeah, and if anybody is listening who is interested, the book that we're talking about, The 7 Levels of Intimacy, is by Matthew Kelly. You can get that on Amazon, and I'll also put a link down below for a PDF version. But yeah, it's a very interesting. It talks about physical intimacy, it talks about intellectual intimacy, emotional intimacy, and spiritual intimacy. I'm still working through it myself, but the more it didn't take long, like Jess said, the first chapter at the most, you're already, you
I'm
know,
already hooked into it.
intrigued. Yeah.
There's elements I'd love to, do another session. There's some critiques that I'm feeling, but at the same time, overall, again, it's the idea that their truth is not my truth. So I'm still taking a lot away from this book.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some triggering moments in it, and yeah, I definitely want to discuss it once we finish reading. And yeah, if anybody else is interested in a discussion on this book, hit me up, let me know, because
We'll have to start a book
it'd be
club around it.
interesting. Yeah, we'll have a little book club on the Happy Hearts podcast. That'd be
Yes.
awesome. But yeah, Jess, I'm really happy that you were able to explore, this subject with me. And yeah, I look forward to more, in-depth conversations about, this and other related, you know, subjects, because as we all know here on Happy Hearts House, the key thing to do is to get us in touch with our emotions and give, you, the listeners, people that we support within Happy Hearts House, um, skills to be able to understand themselves a little bit better each time. So yeah, I'm so grateful that you was able to give me some time, Jess.
Thank you, Becca. I am also so grateful to share this space and time with you. And just,
I look
yeah,
forward to next
so much.
time.
Anytime. Let's do it.
Yay! So excited. So yeah, if you guys want to, carry on this conversation with me and Jess sometime, you better keep listening and watch out for the next episode. We love you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye. I'm Becca, and I've been your host today on Happy Hearts Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you next time. Until then, live with love.